Great. I'm glad I reminded myself. Hi, Kay. Hi, Gary. So happy and grateful to be here with you today, as always, and for this special event. And my intention for this, yes, is to acknowledge this day and also to give hope and inspiration to anybody who wants it or needs it or is looking for it, regardless of what obstacles you have in your life that you're working with. It doesn't have to be addiction. The mechanics of the change that it took for me to get and stay clean and sober from alcohol and drug addiction, you can apply those to anything in your life where you want to change, where you want to create change. Those dynamics are the same. So that's what I want to talk about, as well as, we'll just dive in and see where the conversation flows. And I don't want to just have it be like limited specifically to talk about addiction. Although if you think about it, the traits and qualities of addiction most people have in some form or another. They may be more subtle, they may not be as destructive, but most of us have some form of addiction. And as I said recently, Adyashanti, one of my favorite quotes from him is that the biggest addiction humans have is addiction to their thinking and addiction to negative thinking. So, thanks, Gary. Yay, Britt's got 23 days and do 90 and 90. Wow, and get a sponsor. So I know a bit about you and your history, Britt. So I did not know that you never had done a 90 and 90. Did you ever get a sponsor before? Thank you, Kiana. Glad to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. And Britt, thank you for being vulnerable. You are, of course, in good company. So is there anybody brand new here to my live streams? Hi, Jeff. Okay. So had sponsors, but never been willing to be willing to go to any lengths. Would you say that's been lacking? That maybe, who else can relate to self-will running riot? It's like, so I'm going to dive in. So what I'm going to share about, and again, if you are new to me, I'm a spiritual life coach and Reiki Master Teacher, and also a person who, as of today, has been clean and sober off alcohol and drugs for 25 years, which just blows my mind. But I am going to share a bit about the journey of the transformation. And again, my intention is that this topic meet you wherever you are, because we all have places where we want to change, where things aren't working. And addiction in any form is an extreme example of, an area of life that is not working, and that creates what we call in 12-step circles unmanageability. So sometimes, a lot of times, people have emotional unmanageability. Sometimes for somebody with addiction or issues and things that they want to change, they might have only emotional unmanageability. Everything is internal. For me, I was arrested and I was looking at 30 years in federal prison at 22 years old. So that was not just an internal happening. The addiction had gotten to that point. Oh, wow, Kiana. Where I was having a lot of massive external and internal consequences. Thank you, Susan. And also just, I want to say too, as I dive in, that I got clean and sober through 12-step programs. So that's like the context in which I relate to my sobriety, and also it's not the only way. So I don't want anyone to have an idea that I'm here to say there's one way and it's this. No, I can only share my own past and my own experience, which was using 12-step programs. So congrats, Susan. 19 years on the 28th. Amazing. So I think too, the first time I got sober, I was 17. So the second time I was 22, which was 25 years ago. I'm 47 years old. There, I did the math for you. I don't know if it's a function of the age that I got sober, but I was telling my friend this morning that when I got sober and I could see that this might stick and it wasn't fleeting, I naturally reflected on the future of my life without alcohol and drugs. And I remember thinking, wow, where will I be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? Like, I remember trying to imagine my life 25 years sober. 20 years sober, and I just was like, I could not imagine what it could be. And good thing, because I wouldn't have been able to imagine. If I could time travel back 25 years to the day, future Natalie now in 2024, going back to 1999, little old 22-year-old Natalie. And if I could have said, hey, you'll be in India, you will be a successful spiritual life coach, and you will be doing energy healing, you will be intuitive, you will have lived around the world for over a decade by that point, you will have, helped many, many, many people in their sobriety and in their life. I wouldn't have believed you. I 100% wouldn't have believed that it would be possible. So, hi Maureen, nice to see you. Yeah, because, so what I want to go back to, and as I dive in, don't forget to follow me if you are new here on Insight Timer, YouTube, Facebook, Insta, all that stuff. And if you feel led to reach out to have a conversation with me, I'm happy to offer that a complimentary coaching conversation if you're ready to up-level your life. And even if you think about like 12-step programs, it's really like group coaching, as it were. And the sponsors are coaches. And I mean, the model works, and there's a system. The system in place is the 12 steps. And the 12 steps take you through a journey. Step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. So you start from this place of like total humility and powerlessness and maybe even hopelessness, like, wow, and like self-honesty. This addiction has got me beaten down. That's where you start. Step 12 is the other end of the journey. Step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So you start out in utter powerlessness and despair, and also self-honesty and admission. And then the journey takes you to step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. We tried to carry this message to others. That's the giving away, the being of service, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So it's about, having a spiritual awakening in the journey. A spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience. I'm going to get out my book here, and I'm going to plug in my charger here. So in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, it's stored in a plastic bag because it's falling apart. We have this book. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. But this is where all the steps are. This is where everything is. This is how I transformed my life 25 years ago and 4 years ago, when I discovered and transformed and had another awakening that led me to sit here with you right now. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to look up definition of spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. I'm just feeling into that for a minute. I know we've had some comments come in. Thank you, Maureen. Hi, Ginger. Thank you. Oh, interesting, Kiana. Great. I have missed you, Wendy Lotus. Thank you so much. Jeff, step 6. Awesome. 10 months. Amazing. So this journey that this process takes you on leads you to have a spiritual awakening and a spiritual experience, which implies that there's something different that's happened throughout the journey of the 12-step process. And it basically is a process of cleaning up your shit, cleaning up the stuff in the past where if you've had addiction, likely you have hurt people and yourself, yes, and others. So the 12-step process is a journey of, admission of what's here, which is, powerlessness, unmanageability, consequences, and owning of it. That we're the only ones that have done this. Being responsible, accepting, owning, then looking at, okay, based on this truth of my life is where it is because of addiction, then looking at, okay, if I can't control this, what can? There's got to be something bigger than me. The 12-step program is not religious. If you have grown up or live in religious areas, it might seem as if it's religious, but that is because of the influence of the local culture and society, not because of the 12-step program. The 12-step program is an invitation to believe in something bigger than you that can help you with this problem. And then it's about an ego deflation of asking that power, if it's the universe, spirit guides, Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, it's not important, the details of the thing. And really, if you don't even know what that is, that's okay. The only time where that'll be a problem is if you have a disbelief and you have a closed mind and a refusal to be willing to believe that there might be something bigger that could help you. That's the only place that you can get stuck. So then there's this, you go from powerlessness, hopelessness, admission to the self. There's a problem here. I'm the only one in here that can actually make a decision to do something different, having hope that there could be something different. The hope is so important. And that's why the 12-step program is amazing. And I'm not even here to promote it. It's just my story, and this is the story that's coming out. But if you go to, a group of people who have this evidence, as I have, 25 years now, wow, somebody else did this. It's possible. And then you hear, oh my God, like me, 30 years, I was facing 30 years in federal prison for drug charges. And now I've been 25 years without drugs. Wow, if she can do that, maybe it's possible for me. And then belief in that there's something greater that we can turn to for help, because we can't do this alone. And again, please put in whatever is coming up for you in your life circumstance, because this is really about the nature of change. And y'all know I was just at my amazing friend's house here in India, and he posted on his whiteboard, and he brought up this quote from Abraham Maslow. What one can be, one must be. What one can be, one must be. So if you're living small in whatever way that looks like, if you are giving into old patterns, mindsets, habits, addictions, belief structures, and that's not working, here's that moment of the soul, source, God calling you forth. You see what's possible. If you see it in me, if you see it in any other figure in your life or in the world, if there's a symbol of inspiration around you showing you what's possible, that's your indicator to move towards that. Who are the most inspirational people in human history? The ones that do great things and live into their potential. And it doesn't mean that they have to have done something super amazing. But what you can be, you must be. So if you have that in mind for yourself, what that is, this is your invitation to pay attention. And then to get the support you need to actualize that. Because if you follow me and you've been on the lives that, we just had a very powerful Conversations with God live stream. And basically that's what it was saying. We came here to actualize, to live into our potential. So, for me, I was a horrible, crazy alcoholic and drug addict. It was a shit show. I was a shit show. It's just, it could be a movie, whatever. And whenever I chose just for one day on February 1st, 25 years ago, oh, maybe I'll try to, get sober again just for today. I saw something that was possible. Ooh, there's a potential here. There's other people here in this meeting who they sound like they had the same mindset, the same way they drank, the same hopelessness, the same self-hatred, the same self-loathing, the same self-betrayal, the same self-sabotage. I mean, being an addict, especially when you get really bad, it's like, it's so much self-hatred. And yet the people were saying, oh, I don't feel that way anymore. I love my life. I love myself. I have a home. I have a family. I have a job. I have money in the bank. I have a car. It's not about the externals, but it does, when I 25 years ago, I had nothing. Literally nothing except clothes. And I was living with my mother, who graciously allowed me to live with her. So these people showed me by their example what's possible. And I knew from their stories that we were alike. And this is, the nature of people helping people, and the nature of change, and the nature of, self-realization, actualization, transformation. So wherever you feel stuck in your life, addiction is all about being stuck. And you could be addicted to your negative mindset. You could be addicted to self-hate, to thinking and negative judgments, or, eating. Y'all know I'm sugar-free 3.5 years. That was an addiction for me. Haley, thank you. Yes, that is such a real example, and you're not alone in that, and I've experienced that as well. Being addicted to a relationship of any kind, and narcissistic relationships are soul-crushing and addicting, and yeah. So there's hope. The thing is, with change and transformation of any kind, however you label it, you've got to be at a place where staying where you are is more painful than changing. Do you hear that? So for me, 25 years ago, I hated myself to the core and all the horrible things I'd done. I had, and I don't want to get into a long story of the shit I did because, but yeah, it was a lot. I actually have a story I wrote for Alcoholics Anonymous, the book. It did not get into the book, but it's still a very good story. If you want to read the details of my story, send me a private message and I'll send you that essay that I wrote. And that'll give you all the juicy details. Oh, thank you, Maureen. Thank you. And congrats to your partner on 35 years. Wow. Amazing. But suffice it to say, I felt like the worst piece of shit, non-human on the planet. But yet I showed up that day to that meeting because I had to. I didn't want to go. And then at the end of the meeting, where I got sober in Greenville, South Carolina, they offer these chips as markers of time without drinking. And the first chip they offer is a white chip, and that's like a white flag of surrender. And so I had no plan to stop drinking or anything, but when they offered that, I just found it was like it was somebody else getting up out of their chair and picking that chip up. I didn't plan it. I felt like I was being lifted up and carried to the front because I did not. It was a surprise to me that I was doing that. So it was an admission of surrender. I surrendered in that moment, just for that moment. But the pain of being who I was as an active alcoholic and addict, the pain of staying that way was worse than the perceived fear or pain that it would take to change. So it was less painful for me to quit. Are you following that? So wherever you are with whatever it is that you're dealing with, you've got to, look at that. Have you had enough pain yet? And this is the tragedy of addiction and of humans not reaching their potential, is that sometimes the pain never gets great enough, and so that's when you feel stuck. Or that's if you're like a serious addict or alcoholic, that's when you die. Or if you have consequences that lead to, drug addicts and alcoholics die from accidents, overdoses, health problems, or they go to jail or prison. That's really the only options. Suicide. So I've thought about this a lot, and there's there's a magical formula. So if you are in a place of pain with whatever it is you're going through, in order for there to be change, you need to hit a bottom, right? And what does hitting a bottom mean? It means being in a place of excruciating pain. It might be physical, but, more so I'm speaking emotional or mental or spiritual. There's got to be pain, enough pain and suffering, or we could say suffering would be a better word. There's got to be desperation. So desperation means I am so desperate to have something different, I'm willing to do something different. So I love what Britt shared earlier, that for the first time they're willing to go to a 12-step meeting every day for 3 months in a row, to get a sponsor, do what they say. So when the pain is bad enough, it's a catalyst to be like, I don't care. And that's how I was in the beginning. And I remember saying this to myself and maybe others, where I said, if people in these meetings told me they jumped off a cliff and that's how they got sober, I will jump off a cliff. What we say in 12-step is willing to go to any lengths. Willing to go to any lengths to change. So are you willing to go to any lengths or not? Or are you just like, nah, well, I'm willing to do this, but I'm not willing to do that? Well, you're not ready then. Ooh, Duchess, thank you. That's a perfect quote. I'm glad this is resonating, Haley, although I'm not, because the pain that I imagine you're experiencing is great. I mean, I have been in the nightmare shit show of a narcissistic relationship, and I get it. And also there's hope. I have now been free from that for 5 years, that relationship. And I am, I'd say 99% healed from that. So it is possible for you as well. And it was a journey, just like me getting clean and sober is a journey. So, hi Cora, thank you, welcome. So that's the other thing, right? It's like, for me with my drug addiction and alcoholism, I didn't really drink or use that long because I was such a shit show. Like, I was either going to die very soon from my addiction or get clean, which I did. But it takes time, right? So there needs to be an admission to yourself. Like, I can't do this anymore. There needs to be, so what's called a personal internal commitment. And that may be conscious or subconscious. Thank you, Suze. Thank you. So Duchess, if you feel stuck, then maybe you're not in enough pain yet. Maybe you haven't had enough. And it's not saying there's something wrong with that. Just, if somebody's ready to change, they're going to do it. So for me, like I said, it was the pain and the suffering was so great. The self-hatred was so great. Like, in a bad, not great, but big. That I was desperate. I did not care. I was willing to do anything. 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 I could not tolerate myself and the way I was living anymore. Hi, Lisa Nanda. Yeah, so if you're used to it, maybe you're not ready. The thing that can be good to consider is for you to own that. Because even owning where you're at shifts the energy. That it's a choice you're making to stay stuck. Because that gives a little bit of empowerment and personal responsibility. So there's got to be pain and suffering enough to create the change. There's got to be a gift of desperation, we call it in the program. I had a gift of desperation, and gift of desperation means, like, it's not like, I'm going to rally myself and get into this state. It happens as a result of circumstances. And that's what happened with me. And then the other piece of this puzzle is grace. Grace means, I think the actual definition is like unmerited favor. And I'm not talking about a religious grace. What I'm talking about is something spontaneous that comes down from above or from the outside, that it's a gift. It just happens. Grace allows for a new possibility to occur. So I had all of that. What I had to have was willingness. And that goes back to the willingness to do whatever, to do anything, because I could not tolerate myself anymore. Kim, 2.5 years sober almost, and you feel stagnant. I mean, over 25 years, it's been a journey. Meg, glad that you needed this. You know, it's not black and white. And I'm still not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be, and that's true. You know, why like this recovery from addiction is so inspiring is because it's so extreme and it shows what's possible. I mean, I was homeless. Like I said, I was in jail. I was facing 30 years in federal prison. I had run away. I had run away from Florida to California. Nobody on the planet knew where I was. My parents hired a private investigator to try and find me. They were putting up missing posters. I was on like a suicide mission, but I was too afraid to actually kill myself. I got arrested in California. I don't know how I lived through that experience. I was in some of the most dangerous places and situations in California. There was something watching out for me. So, despite all of that, you know, I made it home back to South Carolina. But I still wasn't ready to give up. So I started working in a pharmacy. It was just a random job that was near the house, and I didn't have a car. And an active drug addict working in a pharmacy, you can imagine what I did, which is what I got arrested for, stealing. Then I was pregnant unexpectedly while I was drunk on New Year's, 1998. So there's a bit of a glimpse into the backstory. So 25 years ago was day one, coming from all that. And if you are changing, like, remember, time takes time. I mean, things changed overnight, but they didn't. I mean, and it happened rapidly. Yeah, so I do have a lot of, I mean, I'm a writer. I'm a Gemini. I'm a writer. So there's quite a lot I have blogs, you know, with some of these stories, and on my Facebook as well. So Wendy had read some things on there. I don't know if I ever posted, like I told you, if you want to know the details, my story that I wrote for the AA book. I don't know if I ever posted that. That might be my post that I will do today for 25 years. Because it's inspirational. So, Duchess. And sometimes, this is like the bigger, like for me, I was an active alcoholic and drug addict that was drinking and using every minute of the day, basically, or every hour, and trying to manage, my life in that way. So it was, because it was such a shift from like active addiction to just cold turkey quitting, it was pretty, like, it wasn't far to go to have major shifts immediately. Sometimes personal change, isn't that dramatic. So in the spaces where, like Duchess is saying, and thank you for sharing, like making shifts, but then feeling like you're not noticing evidence in enough time. I mean, this is where faith comes in. Faith, trust, and surrender, trusting the process. And, me now as a spiritual life coach, like that's where coaching comes in. And I mean, if it's 12-step realms or whatever you do, getting support so you're not doing it alone. This is like, that's classic example of when coaching helps. Somebody's making changes. They feel, they're reverting back into old patterns or mindsets or habits or addictions or whatever. When somebody invests in themselves in hiring a life coach, that puts that, that it ups the level of commitment, and then you have that support. But, there's many ways to do it. That's why I said earlier, like 12-step programs are like the original like group coaching and life coaching in a way. So yes, Haley, the roots of addiction are trauma. Yes, for sure. Gabor Mate speaks to that. So yes, healing trauma is part of the journey. And also, we get to be responsible for our lives now in doing the work ourselves and being at choice and being an owner of our current life circumstances, no matter what we came from, because we are adults now. So there's an acknowledgement of the past, and then there's an ownership of our life and our life's choices up until now, if you're a normal functioning adult, which is good news. Thank you, Kiana. Oh, yeah, I don't know why me submitting my AA story never came up, but yeah, I'm happy to share that with you as a fellow writer. So, we'll just pause here for a moment. And again, don't forget to give me a follow here, there, and everywhere. Give a donation if you'd like. Thank you for showing up. I mean, 25 years ago, I couldn't even have this conversation. Seriously. I really, I mean, sure, some of like the sobriety stuff, but I just wouldn't have had a concept, and that's okay. It's just a noticing. I mean, I feel blessed, lucky, and grateful. The way I believe it is, we come into these, we have incarnations, we have multiple incarnations. We're here to live into our potential. As I said, that quote, what one can be, one must be. So I came in with this potential, as we all do. And then at 14 years old, I became, an addict and an active addict and alcoholic. And, I consider my sobriety my single biggest achievement in my life. And achievement, it's like I said earlier, it was sort of a happening that happened 25 years ago. There was a lot of elements in place where I just was willing and beat down enough. And at the same time, I was the one that made a choice every day, day by day. I would pray and ask my higher power, please keep me clean and sober today, and thank it at night. But without this foundation of the sobriety, I would have been dead years ago, years and years and decades ago. I would have been dead decades ago had I not been open and willing and shown up that day. So although I'm not as immersed in that atmosphere as I was in the past, I always acknowledge I wouldn't be alive. I literally would not be alive. So, yeah, Kim, you see, seeing a trauma therapist. And, we've come a long way since AA started in 1935, almost 100 years ago. And also, we can definitely bring in lots of elements from 12-step. And also, there's other things we've learned as humans and, about dynamics and life and trauma and all that stuff. So Duchess, there's a resource. There's a book called Overcoming Under-Earning I would suggest to you and anyone who struggles with finances. And also stay tuned that I will be offering a group program on working through the book, because it's really it's a book where you take actions to overcome under-earning and create financial freedom in your life. So if that's interesting, I would buy that book. I can send you the name if you want. Thank you, Jen. So yeah, just deeply grateful, humble, acknowledging the help that I had. I couldn't have done it alone. Really, personal change is very difficult to do alone because, great Kim, because there's nobody in here but us. And if we just your results in your life up until now that you've created, both positive and challenging, are based on you and your actions, your thoughts, your decisions. So you can evaluate your life up until now, what's working, what's not working. And if you have not had support and help and you've created the results you've had, some things might be working. But where things aren't working is where you can use support. Yeah, going around in circles doing it alone. It's common. Yes, Duchess, overcoming under-earning. I'm excited for that for you. And yeah, however you get support. But if we are alone here without any support, and you already have a history of any sort of addictive tendencies or trauma, the thing that happens is we make a promise. How many can relate to this? You make a promise to yourself. I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to smoke today. I'm not going to contact the narcissist today or whatever. You say that, and then you break your word to yourself, and you do it anyway, and nobody knows but you because you didn't tell anybody. How many of you can relate? And so that's really deeply damaging to ourselves. And if you have a history where you can relate to anything I'm saying, likely you've been doing this for a very long time. Yes. Yes. And it's not a good, bad, right, wrong judgment. It's a noticing of what's happened. And yeah, I have a story too about my sugar addiction journey where, you know, in my drug and alcohol addiction, I never got to the point where I was waking up every day wanting to quit because I was so powerless. It wasn't even an option. It felt so hopeless that I could quit. I never even made that lie or, you know, told myself that lie. I was just given into my addiction as my fate. But with the sugar addiction, that was a different story where for years, I'm quitting sugar today. I'm not going to eat sugar today. And what did I do later that day? I ate sugar. So in my blog and in my Facebook posts, and you can, if you want me to send it to you, send me a private message. I'll send you the post. Yeah, I would wake up every day. Help me to not eat sugar, higher power. And then I would do it. Yeah, great. Yeah, and please send me a message because there's no way I can remember who to reach out to and how and all of that. So, yeah, and just remind me what resource you're reaching out about. And also, too, remember, I'm happy to have a coaching conversation, complimentary, as my schedule allows. Yeah. And it's so common, especially for alcohol and drug addicts, when you give that up to switch addictions. I mean, that's what I did. I switched to sugar because I quit smoking cigarettes at about 1.5 years sober. And then the sugar addiction and food addiction really took off. So yeah, so that dynamic of breaking promises to ourselves and nobody knows but us. And then we lose trust with ourselves. And, you know, this is about integrity. This is about our word, keeping our word to ourselves. Kim, my drug of choice was ice cream also in my sugar addiction. And sugar is a drug. It is a literal drug. So it's a very real addiction. And that addiction caused me a lot of pain and suffering. And I'm very grateful, you know, to be 3.5 years sugar-free. Thank you, Haley, for the donation. It's almost 11:11 here in India. It's 11:10. So the thing is, you know, it's possible. Change is possible. You've got to want it enough. And if you're committed, you'll find every reason and find every why to make it work and to quit. If you're not committed, you'll find every excuse why it's too hard and why you can't do it and why you keep failing. And that's where kind of that magical formula comes in of suffering, having enough suffering to have enough willingness to do the uncomfortable things, because it will be uncomfortable, I guarantee you. I was telling my friend this morning, I craved alcohol for 30 days when I quit drinking. I don't know why. That's just what my story. I mean, because I was an alcoholic, but. So that took commitment, and a moment to moment, hour to hour, daily commitment. And when I quit sugar cravings, oh my God, I know if you all have that, you can relate to sugar cravings. They're horrible. It's a real physical thing. So the commitment has got to be higher. Awesome. Thank you. I don't know how to say your name. Quao? Yes, Jeff. Half measures availed us nothing. So it's not easy. I can promise you, whatever you're coming up against, whatever form of personal change, if it's addiction, if it's mindset, if it's overcoming limiting beliefs and conditioning and programming, it's not easy. It's going to be uncomfortable because it's new. That's one of the things from the Overcoming Under Earning book that, we'll go into when we do that program. You are going to be uncomfortable. So Lisa Nanda had enough physical consequences to facilitate quitting the sugar and then switch to bread, which is sugar in a different form depending on the bread. But that's okay. You're on your journey. So we don't want to forget about the element of grace that I talked about, and the element of there's something bigger here. So if you feel stuck, if you feel hopeless, I felt totally hopeless. I had already been sober once. I got sober at 17 years old. I was in a crazy Christian brainwashing drug rehab for 11 months when I was 17. I told you, y'all, I have a crazy story. And then I relapsed. And I went back to alcohol and drugs, and it got way worse than it ever had before. And for 3.5 years, I'm lucky I made it out alive. So it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. Thank you. And I know I have and this is a saying in 12-step, I know I have another drunk or drug, relapsing in me where I could get drunk or high again, but I don't think I have another recovery left in me. I don't ever, that's what I used to tell myself in the early days. I don't ever want to go through this again. I don't ever want to get sober and clean again. I don't ever want to get off drugs again. It's so much easier just to stay sober. So whatever it is, even if it's sugar, and there's a craving, it's so much easier to just make it through the craving than go back to sugar and then try and stop again. And and we all have this. Our gold is in our story. Our gold is in our suffering. If I came to you today and I'm yeah, I was born into this amazingly healthy family, and I had the best family, and the most there was no toxicity or dysfunction or drama, and I was around love, and we were wealthy, and I had the best of everything, and my life's just been amazing. That can be inspirational, but I couldn't relate to somebody like that. So I wouldn't think think I could have what they have, because I can't relate. So whatever it is, whatever your Achilles heel, whatever is your addiction or your trauma, your background, your history. Just look at one of my faves is Oprah. People that have come from little or nothing and have not use those things as an excuse to stay small, but have used those things as fuel to overcome and then inspire and help others. You know, I can say, and this is not bragging, it's just the truth, that I have helped people in their lives, and that their lives are different because I connected with them in whatever way it was. That's why we're here. This is bigger than us. If y'all follow me on social, hopefully you saw my story. And I shared it in the live, the little video of when we went to the school the other day and we bought the carpets for the kids in the classrooms, and like, that's why we're here. You know, I'm here to inspire you, to show you what's possible. And I'm not perfect. And if any of you, like, if I ever come across as somebody trying to talk down or pretend I'm perfect, like, please tell me, because that is the opposite of my intention. Thanks, J.E., for sharing that. So I'm just baffled and grateful and humbled and amazed. You know, who and what I've become over the past 25 years. You know, and I love and bless Natalie in all her incarnations, right? And so for you and yourself, we don't want to make ourselves bad and wrong or demonize our past self or whatever choices they made. We want to acknowledge ourselves. We were doing our best. Even when we weren't, we were, because we would do different if we could in that moment. Yeah, step 4, for those who don't know, is the inventory step, where you really dig into yourself and your past and the things that you've done and your addictions that have hurt yourself and others. Yeah, so I mean, if you have like a literal addiction, it serves a purpose, right? To avoid pain. Gabor Mate says, not everybody with trauma is an addict, but everybody that's an addict has trauma. So if I can do this, it is possible for you. And that's, you know, big message I want to share. And the journey never ends. And the journey is guaranteed if you look at what Conversations with God says, The Way of Mastery, Course in Miracles, those teachings, they all say the same thing in different ways. Like, the end of this whole journey is we go to God, whatever that it means for you. So you can't get it wrong. In the end, we will all end up with God. I mean, and we already are. We already are. Thank you, Lorraine. So I'm going to go. I'm so grateful to share this special, special day with you. Don't forget to follow me here on Insight Timer, YouTube, Facebook, Insta. Reach out if this was inspiring to you, if you have the heart call to have a desire to set up a session. Reach out to inquire about that. I do different types of things. And with a spiritual life coaching, depending on the what's the word? How many? I guess the demand. I am happy to offer one complimentary session if you've never had one with me before. So if that calls to you. Or it might be somebody else or something else. It might be like, oh wow, I'm going to finally go to that meeting, or I'm going to finally set up the appointment with that therapist, or etc. So it doesn't have to be me. But again, going back to doing it alone, it works a lot better and easier and quicker and faster if you get help. And there's so many resources out in the world nowadays, so we're very lucky with that. Thank you, Lisa Nanda. So I don't have any live set up, but I'm going to do it maybe even right after this. Our Saturday Night Live, I'm going to set that up. And yeah, I'm going to look at setting up some other lives. So follow me, join my group, Natalie's Healing Circle, here in Insight Timer. We can keep in communication there. Thank you, Duchess. Thank you for sharing the quote you shared, and those of you who shared honestly and vulnerably, those of you in recovery or wherever you are. Blessings, love, namaste. And I want to give a special acknowledgement to the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I would not be alive, as would millions not be alive. So Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith. And what I love about Bill Wilson, Bill W., you may know him as that if you've heard of him, he was very human. He was so freaking human, even after he got sober. Like he became a celebrity because of the the whole AA thing. But he was very, very human in his sobriety. He was not perfect, and he really struggled. He struggled with, sex and love addiction and depression, and so it's an inspirational example, because he wasn't perfect, nor did he pretend to be, and yet he was an instrument, or he had the inspiration that got him to create the 12 steps and just the whole way that all came together, right? Dr. Bob Smith was a bit more saint-like, and whatever. It's just to say we can just be who we are. We don't have to be anyone else. We don't have to be perfect, saintly. We just get to be ourselves and stop judging ourselves. That's where the problem comes in. Thank you, Maureen. Lorraine, yes. Thank you. So, all right, I'm going to go. I will see you all very, very soon. Namaste from India. Thank you, Suze. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.